All right, so we're going to open up our folders and check out the rubric. I want you to notice that on this rubric, there are some major differences. Number one, what's the first major difference that you notice? That it has to be 8 inches tall. What's the second major difference that you notice? Good. There is a creativity and risk-taking section, and I want you to look at that very closely so you can see that it's a possibility that you will lose 10 points if you make a straight 4-sided box or a straight cylinder. All right, so the first thing we need to identify is what is a slab. I want you to write this definition in your notes. A slab is a flat, pancake piece of clay used in hand building. Then underneath of that, I want you to write number 1, soft, number 2, hard. You don't have to write down every single word that's up here. The video that I have here for you is how to construct, or briefly, how to construct using hard slabs. I want you to listen for 3 things when you are listening to this video. Number 1, how many shapes can you make with hard slab? Number 2, what does he do special to join together the hard slabs? And number 3, what condition is the clay in as he is working? Those 3 things I want you to listen for in the video.
The slabs can then be aligned and pressed firmly together. When dealing with leather hard slabs, however, it is not enough to simply score and slip. Each joint must be supported by a soft clay coil. The coil should be placed inside the vessel whenever possible and forced gently into the corners, blended with the slab walls. It's easy to see here why careful measurement is necessary. Hard slab affords infinite possibilities for geometric designs, but usually will require that the design be thought out, with size and angles determined ahead of time.
All right, I know it went very fast, didn't it? What condition of clay are we dealing with here? Leather hard. So the walls have to be leather hard for you to construct them in this manner. We're dealing with leather hard clay. What did he do that was different when joining together his parts of clay? What did he do? Excellent. When he got to the smooth step, he smoothed by adding an extra coil into the corners. Excellent. What was the third thing? How many shapes can you make with hard slab? Infinite is the word. You were right, a lot. The word that he used was infinite. You were only limited by your own imagination. So I want you to write in your notes, make it flat. How are we going to get the ball of clay or the plug of clay flat? You're going to write make it flat, and I want you to write number 1, squish. Number 2, rolling pin. And number 3, slab roller. Squishing with your hand is really only good if you're dealing with a small amount of clay and you want a small slab very quickly. Rolling pin and spacers is good if you are dealing with a little bit more clay, but not a whole lot. And the slab roller, this is good for dealing with large amounts of clay. So these are the three methods that we can use in this classroom to create a slab. Rolling pins and spacers. Rolling pins are located in the center sink cabinet. So you walk over to the sink that is kind of in the center of the room between the wheels and the hand building area. In this cabinet is where you're going to find the rolling pins, and the spacers that you use with the rolling pins. The spacers in our class are the square dowel rods. You put them on either side of the clay, and then you roll the rolling pin on top of the spacers. The clay goes in between your spacers. Just like up here, clay is in between the spacers. Here are the spacers and the rolling pin. We use the spacers to ensure that the thickness of the slabs is consistent all the way through the slab. If you roll out with a rolling pin and do not use your spacers, you will get a slab that is thin on the ends and fat in the middle. This is why we use the spacers. If you use the spacers and you roll it out, the slab will be a consistent thickness from end to center to end. The slab roller, the Mac Daddy, this is what you use to roll out large amounts of clay. This video specifically talks about a cable roller. We no longer have this kind of roller in this classroom. This is the kind of slab roller we have. There is one located by the door. They are blue and they have this big wheel on them. I know you've been curious about what these are. This is a slab roller. The other one is located next to the center sink. It is exactly like this one. They are both blue. And this is what you're going to use to roll out large amounts of clay. There are dials on this kind of slab roller that change the thickness of the slab. And they are right here, these gray knobs on top of the wheel or on top of the roller. These gray knobs will adjust the thickness of your slab. You want to make sure that they are the same. There are needles on the inside of the slab roller that go up and down with those dials. You want to make sure that they are on the same exact setting.
So I've set my slab roller on both sides to just in between 1/4 of an inch and 3/8 of an inch. I really like that thickness for working with. It comes with 2 pieces of canvas, and you take your blank of clay and you set it in between your 2 pieces of canvas. It's really important to have the thickness not be more than about 3 or 4 times thicker than what your eventual slab is going to be. Otherwise, it's really hard to push through the rollers. And it helps also to pat the edge, give it a nice taper so that it can get started through the wheel really easily. Now you put your other piece of canvas on top. You want to have a little bit of space here so you can get it started through the wheel. If you don't do that, you're going to probably end up pulling your clay down into the wheel mechanism. You don't want to do that. So we've got that taper right up against those 2 wheels. And I use this large wheel to start rolling. You can go back and forth a little bit to get it really going, and you can see this lump of clay is expanding. Now I've made it all the way through. I'll pull it back. And I have this table right on the edge where I slide my slab. And now I've got a nice, flat, even slab ready to work with.
All right, now let's write out the steps. If you were to write directions to somebody who's never done this or seen this before, what would the directions be that you wrote for them? What would step number 1 be? What is step number 1? Put the clay on the canvas. But we don't have the canvas yet. Number 1 is to lay down a piece of canvas. So step number 1 is to lay down the first piece of canvas. Number 2, now you're going to put on your clay on the slab roller. Number 2 is put the clay on the canvas on the slab roller. What do I do to the clay before I lay the next canvas down? I have to pat or pound down the edge so that it will feed into the slab roller easier. So you're going to taper, the word is taper. You're going to taper the edge by pounding down the edge. Then the next step is to lay the second canvas on. What do I want to do before I feed my canvas through? What should I check on the slab roller? I need to check the dials to make sure they are even and that they are the thickness that I want. Because this is completely adjustable. You need to check the dials to make sure they are even and it is the thickness you want. Yes? Yeah, you'll have to look at the exact measurements on there so that you can see what it's talking about. When you're up here, when you're looking at it, you can see all the little marks. And it's hard to see from where you guys are sitting, but when you're up here rolling them out, you'll be able to see the dials and the needles. All right, so we checked our dials. What do we need to do now? We put our second canvas on. We check the dials. What's the next step? Good. You want to make sure that you have a little bit of canvas on the edge. You don't want your clay right up against the edge of the canvas. You want probably 4 or 5 inches of canvas before the clay starts. Then you are going to feed that extra canvas underneath the roller. And then tug it on the other side to get it started. Then you can go ahead and turn your big wheel and flatten out your slab. Then you're going to turn around and then bring it right back through. All right, now we're going to watch this video again, and I want you to look for each of those steps. Check them off as she does them.
So I've set my slab roller on both sides to just in between 1/4 inch and 3/8 inch. I really like that thickness for working with. It comes with 2 pieces of canvas, and you take your blank of clay and you set it in between your 2 pieces of canvas. It's really important to have the thickness not be more than about 3 or 4 times bigger than what your eventual slab is going to be. Otherwise, it's really hard to push through the rollers. And it helps also to pat the edge, give it a nice taper so that it can get started through the wheel really easily. Now you put your other piece of canvas on top. You want to have a little bit of space here so you can get it started through the wheel. If you don't do that, you're going to probably end up pulling your clay down into the wheel mechanism. You don't want to do that. So we've got that taper right up against those 2 wheels. And I use this large wheel to start rolling. You can go back and forth a little bit to get it really going, and you can see this lump of clay is expanding. Now I've made it all the way through. I'll pull it back. And I have this table right on the edge where I slide my slab. And now I've got a nice, flat, even slab ready to work with.
So did you catch all the steps as she was going through it? So there are two ways to use these big slabs. This should already be in your notes: hard slab and soft slab. First, we're going to talk about hard slab. All of these pieces are made with the hard slab construction method. How do you know they are hard slab? Just by looking at them. What gives it away? They are squared. What do we know about squares? What do all squares have? They all have corners, and they all have flat sides. Now, does your piece have to be a square? No. But it does, if you are using hard slab, it has to be a geometric shape. It could be a pentagon, or a hexagon, or an octagon shape. You can have as many sides as you want, so it doesn't have to be a cube with 4 sides, but it does have to have flat sides and corners. That is hard slab. So in this video, she's going to talk about how to construct using hard slab. Before you even start to put together pieces, you're going to have to measure your sides.
Now, slab building is not just for small, flat pieces. You can actually construct larger items like vases, boxes, all kinds of things out of slabs. Here, I'm going to demonstrate how to do a square vase made out of slabs. The first thing you need to do is get a piece of cardboard to make a template for your walls. I decided that I want a tall, thin, rectangular vase, so I need a tall, thin, rectangular form. And then you're going to lay that form.
So I want you to see here, this piece that she's holding, that is cut out of cardboard, not clay. You can cut your templates out of paper. You can use the poster paper that we've been using, but it's much easier to measure paper and to cut one shape or multiple shapes if you need multiple shapes for your piece. Cut them out of paper first and use them as a pattern or template when you are cutting out your clay. So if you're doing hard slab, you're going to want to cut a paper template before you begin.
Directly on your prepared slab and cut around it with a needle tool. I've already done this. I've got these slabs cut and prepared. You also want to take this same form and make your base. And what you can do to do that is just cut one of the forms and then lay this against the corner to cut it again to get your square. So that's what this is here. You let these set up. These are actually leather hard. You don't want them to be flimsy, or when you try to construct them, they're going to fall down. So we're ready now to construct the base.
So first you're going to roll out your slab. Next you're going to make your template out of paper. And you're going to cut your slab into the desired shapes. What are you going to have to do then? You're going to have to make them leather hard, either by leaving them out or by using the heat gun to ensure that they're leather hard. Now, in this piece, we're going to see how to put together this hard slab walls of a piece. A couple things I want you to look for in this video. I want you to watch exactly how she scores, slips, and then scores again. Also, look exactly where she scores on the piece, and look at what she's using.
So moving on, we're going to continue with the construction here. Again, actually I want to do this one on the bottom. Scoring, adding slip, and scoring again.
What does it look like she's using here? It looks like she's using a brush. You see the tip end where she's scoring? She is using something called a scoring tool. It has a handle like a needle tool. So the handle looks like a needle tool, but instead of one needle, it has multiple prongs. What do we have that has multiple prongs to use for scoring? A fork. So we don't have a scoring tool exactly like she is using, but we do have a fork that does the same thing.
I'm doing the same thing on the other slab. And press that in. Being careful, line it up nicely on the outside. And we're going to fix the outside of these walls later when we stand this face up, so it does not have to be perfect yet. And now finally, this last piece will go on top of that wall and beside this wall. So we want to score this part and this part. And do the slip. Score it again.
What do you notice about how she slips and scores that might be different than how you've done it? She scores, she adds slip, and then she scores again. Scoring again in another direction really mixes the slip in with the clay and will help you get a better bond, especially when you're working with leather hard clay.
And then we want to score here.
I also want you to notice that she is scoring both the piece that she is attaching and the piece she is attaching it to. You have to score both halves of the project.
And here. Get that nice and goofy without pulling the wall off of the side there. Now we're going to lay this piece on top. You want to go ahead and get it stuck as much as you can to this side so that it won't fall down. And then press it onto here. And once we've done that, we can attach the base and stand this up.
What step does this video skip? The video cuts off before it shows this step. What step did she skip? Exactly. The smoothing part, where you press the coil on the inside of the corner and you smooth it out. It doesn't show it in this video, but I want to make sure that you don't forget that step. Alright, so that was hard slab. Now we're going to look at soft slab. Soft slab is not done when it's leather hard. Soft slab is wrapped around a form when it is still very, very soft and wet. Let's look at their designs here. Did this one get 10 or 20 points according to your rubric? 20 for creativity and originality, or what does it say? Creativity and risk-taking. What about this one? 20 points. What about this one? 20. What about this one? This one's a little bit harder to tell, but he did add a pinch pot to the top of that cylinder. So maybe he didn't get all 20 points because it doesn't really change the form a lot, but maybe 17 points. He did add something to the cylinder to change the form. It just didn't change the form very much. What about this one? 10. Those are straight cylinders. Now this is an interesting point. What is the height requirement for this assignment? 8 inches. Did he meet the 8 inches here with the cups? He did meet it because you can do multiple small pieces that add up to 8 inches. You do not have to create one piece that is 8 inches tall. You could create smaller pieces that add up to 8 inches tall. So keep that in mind. Interesting, this piece with the hearts, this started off as a cylinder. We then took the top and we cut out zigzags. She slipped and scored on all the inside parts of the zigzags. We took this out, so it looked like Bart Simpson's hair, right, or a crown. Then we squeezed together those points, so it looked like this. So we squeezed together those points, so it looked like this. Then we cut off the top, and then she added coils. And then she smoothed them out. That's how she got that shape. This one was a straight cylinder. And then how do you think he made the top? Coils. You could make a pinch pot, but he did it with coils. And then he just smoothed it out. Interesting, how do you think he got this pattern on the headband? He used the back of the fettling knife and pressed it into the clay to make a pattern. All right, so now we're going to see how to construct or put together the soft slab.
So now we're ready to make our base. The first thing we want to do is we want this textured side to be outside. So we're going to flip this slab right on over. Now we're going to take our form. We want one of these straight sides to line up with the bottom. And you want to just press your clay onto the form, keeping that line lined up with the bottom. And once you get to the end of the slab, give yourself just a little bit of extra clay so that they overlap a tiny bit, and cut off the excess. Now that you cut off the excess,
Now she used a form to wrap the clay around. We have a form exactly like the one she used in this video. It is located right where the rolling pins are, in the center sink. They only have one of these forms. So I want to just let you know, bring in something from home. Bring in a 2-liter pop bottle. Bring in a monster pan. Bring in something that you can use as the form if you want to do soft slab, because I have a few. I don't have very many. You can use the glaze jugs. You can use the water bottles on your tables. Just get creative in what you use as your form. But I will give you a cautionary note. Clay sticks to sealed surfaces. Write that in your notes. Clay sticks to sealed surfaces. What does this mean for you? This means that if you use a pop bottle, a plastic pop bottle, that is a sealed surface, or an aluminum monster can. Those are sealed surfaces. You will not be able to get your clay off. So what you need to do is wrap newspaper around those forms, and then you'll be able to slide the form out very easily. Clay sticks to sealed surfaces, so be careful that you don't smash your clay onto anything that is a sealed, smooth surface. You'll have a very hard time getting it off. So she used the form. I recommend that you do put newspaper around this form, even though it is not a sealed surface. It is much easier to get your clay off of the form if you have wrapped the form in newspaper.
you want to score the interior edge of that part and the interior edge of that part. This clay is still pretty wet, so we don't need a ton of slip or a whole lot of scoring. That should suffice. Roll it back together. Give it a little bit of pressure. And now we've got the cylinder part of our base form.
What did you notice about that, especially at the end? She didn't use slip. If your clay is very, very wet and raw, you do not have to use slip, but you do have to press very hard. The other thing you can do is to join it by using your finger or a tool, press in, and it makes a pattern like this piece. So that was the seam, and she pressed in the fettling knife to join it together, which made a pattern. So that is how you do soft slab. The next thing I want to talk about, we have not talked about this on your rubric. Look on your rubric at the pattern and texture part of the rubric. You already know that you can use coils to add pattern to your piece. And you are still welcome to do that. I don't want you to forget about pinching coil. You can incorporate that into this piece as well. But I'm going to show you another way to add texture to your piece.
So now I'm going to show you how found objects can make really interesting patterns in your slab of clay. I've got here the interior of some kind of cactus. It's just a cool little pattern. What I'm going to do with that is I'm just going to roll this right into the slab. As you can see, it just gives a really nice kind of scaly texture. You can use this on a large slab, you can use it in several different directions, and get really cool textures. Another great thing to use, shells and sea urchins, anything that you can find that's hard that you find on the beach, can make really awesome textures. So like this sea urchin, for example, I just roll it all around, all over the slab, and you get this almost lunar texture, this pock marking, that can do really incredible things with your glaze. Seashells too. You know, ooh, that one needs a little lubrication. Again, WD-40. Just give it a little hit, and it's not going to stick to your clay. You can do it.
So what just happened? It stuck. The seashell stuck to the clay. What did she use so that it wouldn't stick anymore? WD-40. I can't stand the way that stuff smells. So we are going to use cooking spray. It's kept right here in the center sink cabinet, the top drawer. We use cooking spray. So if you have anything that is metal or plastic that you want to use as your texture or a seashell, you can put a tiny bit of cooking spray on it, and that will ensure that it does not stick. You want to use a small amount of cooking spray because after you use it, nothing will stick to that area of your clay. So you want to use it sparingly.
In a couple of different directions. You can do this all over your slab to give yourself a really interesting pattern. Finally, something like a cabinet knob, anything. Now with things like this, you definitely want to lubricate them. Any kind of metal object or textured object of any kind can really be used. And if you get repetitive with it, it's not obvious in the end where that decoration came from in the first place. It's just a really cool pattern, almost like the sheet of prefab texture that we use.
All right, so what I want you to notice, back here, back by the clock, in the back of the room, not in the cabinet directly under the clock, that's to the right. This is my texture cabinet. This is where I keep all of those objects that students have brought in and left behind. Some of them my students have made, some of them I have made. But this is where we keep all of our texture stuff. Please know that you are welcome to bring stuff in from home. That would be awesome. I have cool rocks that students have left behind that make extra good texture. I have texture rollers that students have made. I have texture slab. This is a slab of plaster. Plaster is very porous, so you don't have to worry about your clay sticking to it. You would roll out your slab, and you would put your slab on this texture, and then roll over it with a rolling pin. That would etch this texture into your slab. I also have a starfish and some other seashells. Please be careful with these. These are real, and so they're delicate. They're very delicate. So I have lots of objects that you can use right in the room. But please feel free to bring in your own. You can also press objects into the clay using a slab roller. Leaves and other natural materials work well. I have this fabulous example that a student made. She brought in Queen Anne's lace, and she brought in lavender and sage, and we laid it on her slab, and then we rolled her slab back through the slab roller. So it smushed all of those leaves and weeds and flowers into her clay. When we rolled it out, then we picked out the bigger pieces, but we left the smaller pieces in there. What happened to them? They were completely burned away when the kiln was fired. You don't want to leave a lot of natural material in your clay because it could smoke or give off a smell, but a little bit won't hurt anything. So if you have delicate leaves, we just leave them in there and they burn out. I'm going to show you one more video of how to add texture to your clay.
So now I'm going to show you another way to add textural decoration to your slab. I've got this slab that's already been through the slab roller. I'm going to smooth it just a little bit. And then I'm going to take a chunk of clay and I'm going to roll out some thin coils. They don't have to be perfect because they're going to be smushed into the slab of clay anyways. Just like making snakes when you were a little kid. And then just lay them on your slab in any sort of design that you want. You can make an actual shape that represents something, or you can just go kind of abstract. Once you've laid these shapes into your slab, you're going to run it right through the slab roller one more time at the same thickness that you already did. Or even a little bit wider if you want them to stand up a little bit from the rest of the clay, which can be kind of nice.
So notice
Texture
she's going to
So I think
change.
I'll show you that.
She's going to change the depth
Something's a little bit
of
wider
her roller.
than we were before. And roll this.
So notice that she changed the depth of her roller so that the coils that she's rolling through will actually stand up a little bit off the surface of the slab. When we rolled through the Queen Anne's lace and the herbs through the slab, we rolled it through at the same depth so that it would really squish it down into the clay. But here, she changed the depth of the roller so that the coils will stand up a bit.
Slab. I need my wheel. Right on through. And as you can see, we just have an added texture to that slab. It's going to stick because it's been pressed in there pretty well. And now we'll make a base out of this.
All right, that is all I have for you. Make sure that you have read your rubric and you know what your requirements are. Thank you.